At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
We're getting ready to go over, and not a one of us had any idea of, what we were going to be faced with. And of course, I've learned since then, I didn't even know where Vietnam was on the map, to tell you the truth, at the time. I had just heard of it, the rumor mill. The Lance Corporal rumor mill is pretty strong. So all these rumors are floating around about, what we're going to come up against. And the drill instructors had been telling us, and the instructors in staging, and infantry training, you're going to be killed.
That is Marine Corps veteran Grady Birdsong. He fought in the war in Vietnam. Now, yesterday, we released our first episode of our special series on the Battle for Way called The Battle That Changed Everything. And Grady is part of our series. Today on the show, a conversation with Grady Birdsong. He fought at the end of the battle and spent time fighting the NVA just east of the city after they were pushed out of Way. After the war, Grady had a successful business career. He's written books and has done extensive research on Way and the war in Vietnam. Today, a broader conversation about this period of the Vietnam War, the things that led up to the Tet Offensive, leadership during this period, and much, much more. My name is Josh Roe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee.
Let's start with you. In January of '68, you're in the Marine Corps, but you're not in Vietnam yet.
I'm on my way.
You're getting ready. What are you thinking about the war? What do you understand about what's happening there militarily? Tell me some of those ideas.
Well, I'm in staging in Camp Pendleton in January, and there's a sign out there, and every Marine has seen it. The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And we're getting ready to go over, and not a one of us had any idea of, what we were going to be faced with. And of course, I've learned since then, I didn't even know where Vietnam was on the map, to tell you the truth, at the time. I had just heard of it, the rumor mill. The Lance Corporal rumor mill is pretty strong. So all these rumors are floating around about, what we're going to come up against. And the drill instructors had been telling us, and the instructors in staging, and infantry training, you're going to be killed. And it wasn't funny at the time, but there was truth to it, and there was, and you can laugh about it now. But what I've learned since then is that we always train our troops from the last war that we fought. We never learn our lessons. And so I'm a real biggie on now on lessons learned, and passing those lessons learned on. But I have a feeling that they're falling on deaf ears. But anyway, I had no idea where I was going, and we got sent over there on an emergency basis. I don't know if you know any of the history or not, but General Krulak, Victor H. Krulak, who was the FMF Pacific commander under Ulysses S. Grant Sharp, the Navy admiral, was in charge of the whole Pacific. That was all the Navy ships and everything. And of course, Westmoreland was the commander of MACV, Military Assistance Vietnam Command. Krulak knew that the war was escalating, and caisson was building up, and he was scouring the West Coast and the East Coast for people to put into the 27th Marines Regiment. They had an idea. Westmoreland had called for troops to be sent, and I believe it was October. He asked for 200,000 more troops to be sent. The Joint Chiefs of Staff were all for it. And all of this I didn't know at the time, but I've done a lot of research. I wanted to know, what happened. I've read just about every book I could get my hands on, both the intellectual type books as well as the books that individual Marines and soldiers have written, just to understand it. But Krulak was scouring the West Coast and the East Coast for people. And if you delve into the history of the 27th Marines, you're going to find that in the grunt ranks, the 0311 MOS, military occupational status, that most of those guys I shouldn't say most of those guys, a lot of those guys were cooks, candlestick makers, bakers, graves registration engineers, and they became riflemen. Of course, that's your basic MOS when you go in the Marine Corps anyway. And they became, fire team leaders, squad leaders. There was an inkling, I shouldn't say inkling, there was a smattering of veteran Marines who had already been to Vietnam in the leadership, in the enlisted leadership, in the corporals and sergeant ranks, a little bit into the upper enlisted ranks. And they were starting to make a lot of the in upper level enlisted ranks, senior NCOs, Mustang officers, and they would give them companies. In fact, just about all of our company commanders, half of them anyway, in 1st Battalion 27 Marines were Mustangs, and good ones. Anyway, I had no idea about any of all of this when we got to Vietnam. And when I got to Vietnam, and I got off the plane, I got off the plane in Da Nang. I flew over. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't breathe the air. A smell like I had never smelled ever before. I'd grown up, in the country, around farms and cow shit and all of it. And so I'd worked in a sheep kill, in a packing plant for 6 months before I went in the Marine Corps. And so that kind of stuff wasn't foreign to me, but I had never smelled anything like Vietnam. And I could not breathe. The humidity, the air, and the smell, it was completely foreign. And it took me a couple of days to acclimate.
There's so many things that I have thoughts about. And I can remember, I went to Vietnam this past fall, and we arrived, 11 o'clock at night, and getting off the plane. And it's a completely different country today, obviously. But I remember walking out of the airport and just the humidity just hits you in the face. And you're like, whoa. Yeah. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's humid here, right? But it's like, it's a whole different ballgame there. And so I can only imagine the wartime smells and everything else on top of that, and kind of what a culture shock that was for a young Marine to go, whoa, this is where I'm going to be for a while.
Yeah, and we rode down through. They said you get on a 6x after we showed them our orders, and we were going down to the 27th Marine headquarters south of Da Nang, and we rode through the south end of Da Nang there from the airstrip. It was a war zone. I mean, it was bullet ridden. The offensive had already begun. And the little kids were, begging for food or anything we'd give them. It was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And so with that idea, so you got off the plane, you arrived February of 68, right?
Right. End of February.
So And you were
February 23rd.
And you were sent almost directly to Hue at that point, right?
We went down south of Da Nang to our staging area. The 27th Marines took over for the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. They took over their area. 27th Marines regimental headquarters was placed there. It was called Duong San 2. It's about probably 5 to 8 miles south of Da Nang airstrip, we were to do the handoff with 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. Well, 1st Battalion was there also, but after about, I think it was 2 or 3 days, they said, go to Hue. And they dispatched us, and some of the companies went by 6x, some of the companies went by helicopter. My company, H&S, went up on an LST. We went down to Da Nang Harbor, got on an LST, and took all of our communications equipment and went up the side of the coast. And we did a beach landing there at Cole Island. I thought we always called it Cocoa Island. We thought it was like cocoa and chocolate, but it was Cole, standing for Colonial Company, which was an old French colonial company. And that's where all of the supplies came into the Hue area via the sea. Fuel, logistical, beans and bullets, everything came there. And we landed on the beach there, and we walked in. It was like about 9 clicks. And I can remember, we were carrying base plate. I must have had 60, 70 pounds worth of gear on me. And some of these guys, they'd take comic books out, pitching them, or candy and pitching them, just to lighten the load because we were all sweating. And we started taking sniper fire, and we had to go take care of that. And when we got close to the tree lines, and then it wasn't funny.
Since I've talked to you last, I've had other talks to other Marines who fought away, and I think one of the things that's interesting, there's many things that are interesting, but it's also the idea that I guess Marine Corps records show that the battle officially ended, I believe, March 2nd, something like that. And,
right. Uh-huh.
But if you're there, if you've made it through all of the gauntlet that was the Battle of Hue, there's no moment where they say, okay, this battle is over now. You're just fighting in and out.
It wasn't over. I mean, it was over as far as the upper level command said it was.
Right.
What had happened is, and this is from what I can gather from my reading, and I'm not the expert. But the 1st Marine Regiment, the elements of the 1st Marine Regiment and the 5th Marine Regiment, they had pushed all of the NVA out to the northwest back into the Ashau Valley. I mean, not all of them. But also there was a heavy support, the 804th, I think it was the 4th Regiment, in the canal area. They were there long before 6 months before. They had embedded out there, and they were collecting taxes, which they were collecting rice for their food supply. It was our duty to. I mean, they didn't want to lose it. They had visions of coming back and doing another mini Tet Offensive in May, and they were going to use that rice supply in that area, that staging area, to go back into Hue. But it didn't happen because we pretty well secured the area. But it was very strategic. It actually, my battalion XO, who I became pretty good friends with, Colonel Pete Eller, he told me, he said, the area that they assigned us should have been assigned to a regiment rather than to a battalion. And Task Force X-Ray, which was Brigadier General Foster LaHue, his S3 people would keep assigned. I know our S3 guy very well, Lieutenant Colonel Gruenberg. I talk to him once a week. Yeah, but anyway, they would tell him on a daily basis which grids to go cover, and he didn't have enough men to go cover them. And where we became somewhat successul is we set out stingray patrols. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I've heard I've heard of that before, but I don't know the specifics of it.
You send out a 4-man patrol with laws and a radio, and heavily armed, and you'd look for movement at night. You'd go out and set up ambushes all over the place in strategic areas, and that seemed to curtail it. But we finally found the concentration of what the 5th and the 1st Marines had done. It pushed all of these NVA back out into the canal area. We finally found that concentration, and the Arvins had tried to go in there prior to, back in October, November, December of 67 67. Prior to the Tet Offensive, and they had been repulsed out of there. Of course, they didn't want to go too much outside of their area of operation. But yeah, there was a lot more NVA and local VC. There was a few local VC units, main force units that were out there. And they were intimidating all the local farmers. The local farmers, they didn't want anything to do with any of that, us or them, of the NVA and the VC. And they were caught in the middle. They just wanted to raise their crops and their families. And
right.
In fact, we had a little. That reminds me of the little boy Nguyen. I got to be friends with. I'd give him sea rats all the time. He lived on the farm, kind of close to where I would go out on and into our fighting hole on the perimeter. And he'd come over, and I'd give him food. And I'd say, "VC come today?" And he'd say, "No VC today." But when he'd tell me VC in area, why we'd get sniper fire or we'd get mortars. Or
so his intel was pretty good.
His intel was pretty good.
Wow, boy. I think that's just an element of fighting a war that most of us who've never experienced that can't quite understand.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. You're on the ground in 68, and you're obviously some tough fighting's going on where you are. At the same time in America, we had all the reporting around Tet, and we know that protesting the war really escalated that year, as also combat KIAs also escalate that year. What perception did you have of any of that as you're fighting the war?
Well, I didn't have a whole lot of perception. I knew there was a lot of protests going on. We really didn't get a lot of the news as to what was happening. We knew that there was a lot of people, trying. Most of the people back then that were trying to protest were the people that didn't want to go into the draft, didn't want to get drafted, the draft dodgers. Students, and then they and the religious leaders, and then some of the the Martin Luther King was the moral part of it. That's where most of it was raised in the educational system, higher level education system. They thought that the war was immoral, but mostly it was people didn't want to go serve the country. That was at least my perception at the time, and also the fact that the war was dragging on. It was, and the body count was getting higher, and the American public was starting to be very concerned about that. And of course, LBJ, McNamara, and Westmoreland, they were the light at the end of the tunnel was the constant theme in all of their public speaking engagements. And Westy, who everybody called Westy, He really thought that they were going to win, and of course I've pointed out in my research that his big thing was attrition. Throw a bunch of firepower at them and catch them out, and get them to accumulate in one area like Quezon, and blow them away. And then, of course, Victor Krulak, who was very influential figure in the Marine Corps at the time, he probably should have been commandant. Things would have probably been different had he been, or had at least commanded something in the war over there on the ground. Things would have been completely different. But he wanted to protect the population centers, do the CAP program, Combined Action Program, do basically an armed Peace Corps. And of course, that Petraeus adapted that strategy also in Iraq, and you were probably part of that, counterinsurgency type warfare, which was very successful, I might add. It was probably one of the most successful things we did in Vietnam, but it wasn't carried far enough. The Marines were the ones that really did it. So, and there was a rift between Westmoreland and the Marine Corps, big time rift.
Right.
And I've got some new stuff here if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, let's get into that here in a second. I want to ask you a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
Pre-Tet or during Tet, maybe. And
Yeah.
The thought I had as you're saying some of this is, and before I will couch this with the idea that I am a journalist. I'm not defending journalism in any way. There are plenty of problems there that we all understand. But during the war, Tet specifically, Saigon, which is where the bulk of the journalists were at the time, the reporters were at the time, that got a lot more of the reporting than Hue, because at that point there wasn't a lot happening in Hue. So the reporters who ended up there went there because, there's something happening, not because they were there. And the same thing with Quezon. As reporters, you kind of, if the leadership is talking about this one specific area, that's going to get a lot of ink, if you will. And that's what happened there with Quezon as well. And I think that's part of the story around Walter Cronkite going the way, is that
Right.
the things that he understood from talking to people in the Pentagon, and the things that reporters like John Lawrence, who were on the ground in Hue, and then Gene Roberts writing in the New York Times, the things he was hearing from his people in the Pentagon were not what he was seeing from the on the ground reports. And
Right.
He's like, I want to go see what this is. There's going to be inconsistency there when you're talking to a leader versus you're reading what somebody saw, and then also someone is in this part of the country or this part of the area, and it's happening, and what's actually interesting is happening 100 plus miles away, etc. There's, when you try to go back in time, that's the question I'm trying to get to, and try to piece that together, it is kind of a tapestry of different people in different places, seeing different things, understanding different things at different times. That it had to be confusing for the American citizens at the time of actually what is happening and what's important here. How do you see that?
Well, at the time, I had no idea any of this was going on, and I've been able to discern through reading and watching, videos and everything. Cronkite, if you follow you can follow him on YouTube of back then. He had a completely different story there in Vietnam than he did when he came back. He told it was over with, or I'm not sure what exact words were, but he said that it's lost. And of course, LBJ said, if I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America. And shortly thereafter, why he resigned. But and I had no, we knew on the ground amongst us lance corporals and corporals that we weren't there to win. uh, uh, that it was a continuation, and we had a saying, "There it is," meaning they're just saying that. There it is. I mean, it don't mean nothing. We're just going to continue on. And we were there for our buddies.
So that was clear to you at the time that what you were being asked to do was not a strategy to actually win a war. You understood that.
We understood that. We knew that. However, now I'm a patriot, and I'm not going to let my buddies down, and I'm not going to let my country down. And I grieve for all of those men that we lost there at Hue and south of Da Nang. I don't think it was all for naught. We were there because of we were fighting for our country and against the spread of communism. SEATO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, a loose consortium of Asian countries, kind of like NATO, but not a military force. But we had pledged to them that we would help them out. But we really messed it up when in '72 when we walked away from it and left them holding the bag. Anyway, does that kind of answer your?
It does. It does. I just think it's interesting of how you go back in time, try to piece it together, and some of it fits, some of it doesn't, and you're not really sure why. Like you said, you're corporal, lance corporal. You see the problems at the time. You went back again. What year was your second tour?
Oh, I stayed over there.
You stayed.
You could extend for 6 months, and they would send you any place in the free world for 30 days. So me and my buddy, we went to Europe and got wasted on German beer. We had a pretty good time. We traveled around a little bit, then came back to Vietnam, but. We extended 6 months. I spent almost 21 months over there with a 30-day reprieve. I got to stop by home on the way back from Europe.
I got you. So one tour, just an extended version of that tour. Is that right?
Right.
Got you. Understood.
Right. And I went up to the DMZ. I went to 2-9, Hell in a Helmet for a short time. And that was at Quang Tri. Excuse me. And then I got assigned to 3rd Marine Division Communications Company, Headquarters Communications Company at Dong Ha. And they told me I'd be in a rear area while we were in the artillery, the NVA artillery V ring. we'd get artillery or mortars, or we'd get something every other day. I lived in a bunker my last 6 months up there on the DMZ, and of course, we'd open up the road out to Cam Low on Route 9 every morning. So I carried a radio, and anyway.
That period in '68, you already knew that McNamara had announced he was going to leave the Pentagon prior to Tet, but then after Tet, by the end of March. President Johnson says, I'm not going to seek re-election in '68. And then I believe it was June when Abrams takes over for Westmoreland as the commander of U.S. forces.
That's correct.
What impact did all that have as far as the morale on the ground? Did it seem like there was turmoil among leadership? Did that matter to you? How much did that enter your thoughts?
We really didn't know about what was going on in the higher levels. It was apparent that we would go out and take something and then just walk away from it and let it go, and then we'd have to come back and retake it again. That was apparent, and a lot of us thought that, well, that's kind of stupid. But there was maybe this is a good time to get into the Marine Corps Army Rift, Westmoreland and Marine Corps Rift. And it was basically in three areas: command and control, Westy, the Marine Corps Cushman, General Robert Cushman, felt that he was bypassing the Marine Authority in I-Corps, and he was trying to move Army troops up into I-Corps. And on I think it was the 13th of February, he announced that in a LOI, which was a letter of instruction, we call them letter of intent in business now, that Abrams would come over and be his deputy at MACV Forward in Fubai. And number two, the strategic priorities were the DMZ defense, and let's see what else here, pacification, which was the CAP program, and Hue. Those were the three big things that were going on, and Westy was, from what I can gather in my reading, was fixated on Quezon. He thought it was going to be a Dien Bien Phu, and he thought he was going to be able to get them out in the open and arc light them, and he had the artillery and everything. And Cushman and Krulak were pushing back, and they felt that the Army was overreaching their authority, and by moving the Army up there and changing I-Corps around. And I dug into the you know what a spec-at is, a telex in the command chronologies. I pulled out one specifically, and this was written in 20 February of 1968. The Battle of Hue had just about come to an end. I think they finally ceased the fighting in the city on the 26th, and like you said, on the 2nd, Hue was declared over with. And Krulak, pushing back, wrote a top secret for Marine eyes only to Lieutenant General Cushman. And I won't read the whole thing. And he got Sharp involved in it. I'm going to read a couple of quick passages here, and it'll give you an idea, a flavor for what he was thinking. And he says, Westy's letter of instruction will not work unless the directive is soon changed or rescinded. You may wish to go to him, he's talking to General Cushman, and point out its defects, requesting that Abrams' position as a staff officer are not a commander be made clear, and requesting that the requisitioning of causing the MACV staff to serve or third MAF part-time be eliminated. So he was pushing back pretty hard to get Abrams cut out of the picture and them retaining the authority. And then in summarizing, he said another subject, this is on the Quezon, the question you asked, new subject. I personally feel that the enemy less concerned about the hazards involved in assaulting Quezon, Cantin, etc., then he is about the aftermath, the enemy being about the aftermath. He doubtless senses that no great triumph is involved in continuing a position only to be rejected by counterattack. Consequently, it would appear probable to let the enemy know by the usual various means that our defense of these key localities is intended to be an active one, that our counterattack plans are comprehensive, our counterattack forces very strong. Warm regards, Krulak. So he was committed, and he was pushing back. There's a lot of these. They got pretty vitriol in a couple of them, but that'll give you a general idea of the thinking.
I appreciate the research on that. That's fascinating. Yeah, and I think that also points to an interesting part of the Way City story and beyond. You mentioned Dien Bien Phu. That was obviously something that President Johnson talked about a lot. No more Dien Bien Phu, or no Dien Bien Phus. That was
right.
And so Westmoreland understood that, and I think that's what he was trying to do, because he was taking a lot of his orders directly from White House Pentagon. You look at the chain of command during Way, and that story about the first afternoon when Alpha 11, Bill Purcell's group, and then Golf 25 show up at the MACV compound with the orders to go across the bridge to the Citadel and get the South Vietnamese general out of the Citadel before anybody realized what was in the Citadel. And
Trong. Yeah.
Trong, exactly. And so they're calling back to Phu Bai, who is 1-star General Le Hue. So 1 star, 2 stars. I think he's 1 star.
Brigadier General 1 star.
Yeah, but he's answering to Cushman in Da Nang, who's answering to Westmoreland in Saigon, who is answering to McNamara, President Johnson, etc. These orders are coming down, and
he didn't have the intel. He did not have the intel.
Right.
If you delve into all of these telexes, in fact, I've got his oral interview. I think I showed you one of those oral interviews.
Is this the LeHue you're talking about? Didn't have the intel?
Yeah, LeHue. Or let's see. No, that was Cushman. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Cushman. Okay. No, I'm not. No, I don't have LeHue's. But I've read enough about. I've discerned that he felt that he didn't have the intel. And MACV was telling him that no, it's assisted diversion. Brigadier General LeHue was not convinced that the enemy combatant order battle that Gravel and Cheatham was reporting back was as big as they told him it was. And everybody that was reporting back said the NVA are everywhere.
A big thank you to Grady Birdsong for this conversation. And there's more of this conversation. We'll have that coming soon on the show. Also, the next episode of our series, The Battle That Changed Everything, will be released on Thursday, August 14th. This podcast is hosted, produced, edited, engineered by me, Josh Roe. And this show is a production of NewsChannel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.